Well, it kind of looks like it's sunny in all of the locations. Maybe we're having a across the country Sunday. I think we'll go ahead and get started. So kia ora koto, ko Stephen toku ingoa no o tatahi ao. It's great to welcome you all. I think this is the 7th of these video calls. So it's great to see so many of you still keen to come along and participate and enjoy hearing cross-sector perspectives, and then have some brainstorming and think about collaboration in the future as well. So the normal format for those of you who are joining the first time is that we just have a few sector updates and really trying to hear from different perspectives from across the sector, things that people are seeing, because we tend to operate within our own bubbles, don't we? And talk with people who are doing similar things to us. So I'm really keen that on these calls, we're able to hear other perspectives, other voices. So we're gonna have 2 or 3 of those. And then one of you, Sue Crawford, had an idea about some way that we could continue to engage that's not on the calls using technology, in particular using Slack as an idea. So I've just asked if she could explain her concept and what she think it would mean, and then gauge your interest. And if people are interested, then we can try setting something up. But before we get into that, and then the final bit is we'll do our usual breakouts and we'll have some discussion and feedback to the group. But before we do that, we'll just get into a few sector updates. So Anne, Rodda, maybe you can go first. And Anne and I actually just finished a podcast episode. So I feel like I've gotten to know her in the last hour really well. And the reason I've asked her to share with us is that she brings an incredible wealth of experience, particularly in the cultural sector, the arts. She's been involved in running competitions that you'll have heard of, the Michael Hill Violin Competition, as well as involved in the Auckland Writers Festival and just a number of different initiatives in the arts sector. And I was conscious that we hadn't had an update from somebody in that sector to this group. So I'm really keen, and if you can take over and just share some of the things that you're hearing, particularly how this is affecting people like musicians and others. Yeah, we're really keen to have those perspectives. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Stephen. And I'm just saying a quick hi to Tess Casey, whom I met. Hi again. And hi, Kate Frykberg. So nice to see you both. Yeah, so it's a bugger, you know. Performing arts have been hit hugely, and the whole artistic sector is just absolutely been side blasted. The immediate outcome of COVID-19, of course, was a cancellation of events. So that was smack dab in the middle of the Auckland Festival. Writers and Readers Festival had to make the call quickly in a May event to not progress. And so that's just an absolute gagging of the art form, but also, the reason we exist is to share, and then the income that generates from that. And to have to close things down midstream, very complicated. I was talking to the CEO of the Auckland Festival, and there was huge expenses for shipping costs, for instance, that we don't think about because the pipelines had gotten congested because they were being diverted to other things. So that was the immediate one. What's happening right now is that creatives are contorting themselves to share their art in different formats. You know, everything that we're seeing entertainment-wise that's either been created or is coming up online right now is being produced by creatives and, technologists, but all of the entertainment certainly, and a lot of the communications are artists that are looking for a way to communicate in a different format. Some of the most incredible ones I've seen, if you're curious for something that's both joyful and painful, Google, YouTube, Juilliard Bolero, and it's their dance and theater and music program and jazz and rock and roll all contributing. Stunning, blow you away. But this is what creatives do, right? They come out of the box doing imaginative things. What I find concerning, and I'm sure I'm not the only person, but it really resonates with me, is next year is going to be really hard. 2021 and beyond I just don't see sponsorship being what it used to be. The things that have the self-earned income is really going to be challenging. So those organizations that are of a size that have the benefit of long-term government support, either from the city or from Creative New Zealand or from other major funding sources, will survive. They'll have to tone it down a bit, but the ones that are year to year or project to project, it's going to be a real struggle, and it's frightening for them, I'm certain. So sponsorship, businesses are focusing on their core business and survival right now, so they won't have sponsorship in the mindset is a good thing. It'll be the first thing that's cut. Grantors are repurposing their funds. We've seen this with Creative New Zealand, that instead of providing the regular kind of granting rounds, they're doing resilience grants and emergency grants to artists and about creating work during this environment. So grantors, hopefully, that have money still in the tank for invigorating after the outcome are going to be called upon very quickly. But then the third of four sources of income would be philanthropy. Obviously, we're going to have some new philanthropists through all of this. That's exciting, but it's not possible to count on the same families because they've been hit, of course, depending on where they've been placing their investments and what their priorities are. And then the fourth thing is ticket sales. So I know of several companies that are contorting themselves to deliver work under level 2. And the fact that we heard just yesterday that that includes domestic travel will create a new paradigm. Chamber music will be easy. That you can do that with under 100 people, but it's talking about rebooking concert venues where it used to seat 500, now 100, and what does that look like in terms of ticket sales, and can you still distance people in a smaller space? So that's the current work right now, but I don't believe there's been enough understanding or recognition that next year is going to be even harder. So that's a grim look. I mean, grim and joyous. I was saying to Stephen, the arts will, I still believe, have a renaissance, and what we're all learning in this time is technology is fantastic, but boy, are we sick of looking at each other on screens, and we want to get into human space, and artists do that better than anyone else, is provide the kind of context and the placement to express what we've experienced and the joy of being together again. So there will be opportunities, but it's incredibly fragile.
Great, thank you so much. It's really good to hear that perspective. And like I said, I don't think that we'd had somebody from sort of thinking about the arts and creative industries and what's going on there. So thank you for sharing. And like I said, we literally just finished a whole hour long talking about Anne's life. So if you're interested in her background, that's going to come out. And it was really interesting to think about COVID and the impact it's having on the creatives. So next up, Kate, do you mind sharing a little bit about an initiative that you've been involved with? So this is Kate Frykberg, and I know that you've been hard at work on trying to look at the funding relationship. So this is a little bit different to COVID response, but quite often when you have funders and the people receiving the funds, it's kind of a one-sided relationship. And I know you've been working on a document which is more about a mutual collaborative approach to funding. And I just thought it would be great for the people on this call to hear a little bit about what that's about. So over to you.
Kia ora tātou, ngā mihi mai aha kia koutou. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Cool. So I'm Kate. For those of you who I haven't met, I've been working in philanthropy for quite a few years. I was CEO of Todd Foundation and Chair of Philanthropy New Zealand. I'm now an independent philanthropy consultant, and I sit on a few boards and I blog. So the blog which I put out yesterday has nothing to do with COVID-19, but it's something which I've been involved with for a little while, and finally got to where it can go live. I've been thinking about funding agreements which philanthropy and government put in place when they give grants, and how actually they're really not very helpful documents. They're very one-sided, they're often really legalistic and sometimes quite draconian. So what a group of us are proposing is that we do away with them entirely and instead go to like a relationship agreement model, where it's a mutual agreement. This is what the funder commits to the organisation. This is what the organisation commits to the funder, and it's a much more egalitarian partnership, relationship focused way of working, I think. So we've gone as far as creating a template for that. So you can download that off my website. Stephen has been amazing providing some legal advice on it. So it is hopefully robust, even though simple. Would love feedback. I suspect most of the people on this call are not funders, but what you can do, perhaps, if you like it, is show it to your funder and say, hey, you know, maybe we could go to something which looks a little bit more like that, like this, if you like it. If you don't like it, then give us feedback. That's me.
That's great. Thank you very much, Kate. And what we'll do in the after every call, for those of you who are new, we try to send an email out which has links to anything that was discussed. And I know at the moment, I think there's 39 people on the Zoom call, but there's actually more than 170 that get the emails now. So it's, I know lots of people send me apologies. They can't make it because of other Zoom meetings usually. So there's quite a large number of people who are watching the videos after or are looking at the links and able to access them. So if you do see anything that looks interesting, if you send it to me, I can then add it to the email list and send it out wider. And hopefully if you're on this call, you've gotten in touch or you've seen the emails, so you see the approach there, which is try to spread information about good things that are happening. So the last sector update, Andrew, do you mind just giving us your usual update from Charities Services perspective? Because all of us are in the trenches, involved in different organizations, and it's good to hear that perspective from you as well.
Sure, thanks, Stephen. Can everyone hear me? Yes, good, like seeing those thumbs up. Kia ora koutou. So just another quick update. We've been running one-on-one clinics with charities and community groups on Thursdays, just to kind of give people an opportunity to talk with either an advisor from Charities Services or Hapai Hapori, community operations, so the funders, and within Department of Internal Affairs. And we've found that's been not a lot of buy-in, but quite a few people have been talking to us. And for those people, it seems to have been really useful. So if you've got anyone who wants to talk one-on-one, very happy to, we're going to keep that going for the rest of the month of May. Based on some queries this week, that's, I think, with some people here, I did some quick searches of the numbers of charities that have been voluntarily deregistering since the COVID crisis kind of kicks in, just to get a sense of what we're looking at currently and whether there's been a quick turnaround. And I suppose the good news is there hasn't been a significant number of charities deregistering, in fact, less than usual, probably because we haven't been sending out reminders for annual returns. That being said, I'm sure that will change, and I thought I'd just keep that little search going, so just to keep you updated to see if that changes and whether we do see some decrease in numbers. Also, COVID hasn't been mentioned in any voluntary deregistrations thus far. So, we're also part of a governance, community governance coalition that's been doing some sprint work on improving governance in the sector. Francesca, who's on the call, sits on that, the governance group behind that. And we should hopefully, we'll have some updates on what that's been looking like and some of the really interesting suggestions for streams of work that will lead to hopefully better governance. And I think it's an important thing we keep in mind as the COVID is going to be really significant, but keeping that good governance piece running in the background to try and improve that across the sector. We just thought it worth calling out ethnic communities who gave a presentation, the Office of Ethnic Communities gave a presentation a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, continue to produce really useful translated pieces of information from the official COVID line. So if you're hooked into that, like them on Facebook. I think it's really, and if you're hooked into ethnic communities in your particular role, really useful to feed that information to those. I think it's a fantastic little piece of work that they've just been rolling out based on their own staff who speak loads of different languages. So I think it's a really nice little thing they've been doing. And we are currently working with the National Crisis Management Centre on level 2 guidelines to try and provide a little bit more certainty around some of the edges, especially things like street appeals, face-to-face fundraising, that kind of thing, so that charities can feel a little bit more confidence in their planning, as I'm sure everyone is in that space, particularly Helga. Thanks, Helga, for drawing my attention to that in particular. And I think, and we do have a webinar next week on Tuesday from 12 to 1, just dealing with some of the questions that we've been receiving about COVID, particularly around what boards should be thinking about planning into the next few months. And Kate Bonnman, who's also on this call, will be presenting. I'm a little bit hesitant to advertise this too broadly because I think we're almost at capacity now, but we will be recording it and sending it out, and we might be running another one if we get so much interest that we think it's worthwhile doing. So that's my brief update. Not that brief, but thank you.
Great. No, that's perfect. Thank you. It's just good to hear that perspective. And if you do come across any statistics or things, then I think that's really of interest to people, as you know. And from my perspective, I had a client who had applied to become a charity and had some questions raised. And so it happened like literally the week of the lockdown. So we asked for an extension and were granted it. And we've just asked for another extension and were granted it, which I think shows that the attitude of Charities Services is, you know, they understand it's not normal. So, so that's really good to see. Now, I think Sue may be on the call. Is that right, Sue Crawford? You know, using technology is great. And one of the ideas here is that Zoom provides us a way to interact. And Sue wrote to me and said, have you thought about setting up a Slack channel or some way to communicate outside of the meetings? So I'd just like for her to say a few words on that idea. I think it's quite a good idea. I've used Slack in the past. And the way that we're going to judge if people want that is in the chat section. If you want to be part of a Slack group, then maybe just type Slack. And that way we'll have a record of who wants to be involved in it. And then we can set something up. Also, if you would rather that there was like a LinkedIn group or a Facebook group, because there's lots of ways of connecting, then we could also do that. So Sue, I think you're on the call. Do you want to say a little bit more background? And as she talks, you can type in your whether you're interested in being in a Slack group.
Oh, hi everyone. Yes, my name's Sue, and the Slack channel option is quite a good one. We use it at Tech Futures Lab. Is anybody not aware of that application? If I could just see a raise of hands. Okay, so I've got a screenshot just here on my screen, and so what it is, in fact, what I'll do is I'll just share my screen first. I'm not sure
I need to make you a co-host, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I can do that though. Hold on a second. Why don't you start talking and I'll try and add you as a host.
Yeah, and so the advantage of Slack is that you can create lots of multiple channels within a Slack channel. So let's say we wanted to create a group for us, and we could actually have lots of sub-channels within that group to put different things. So it's quite good segmentation. And the other thing is, what's really great is it sort of brings together people in a group. We can either post to the main channel and everybody gets copied, or post, you know, just have a direct message to anybody else on the channel. And so, yeah, I use it quite a bit. I use it at Tech Futures, but I also use it in some of my other groups. So it's just a really great way to sort of connect people together as well. Did we get some?
You should be a co-host now, so you should be able to share. Yeah,
okay. Yep, here it is here. Yeah, so hopefully you can just see on my screen here. Are you able to see that, Stephen?
Yep.
Yeah, so this is my Tech Futures Lab Slack channel, and we've got some posts here, people can post or put links, and there's lots of sub-channels that you can sort of create, sub-channels. You know, obviously, if Stephen was the admin there, he would create the channel at someone's request perhaps, and then you can also just have direct messaging with other people within the channel, private conversations and things like that. So yeah, I do recommend it. I've actually got about 4 channels altogether, with just different groups of people that I'm sort of you know, linked in with, really. Yeah, so I'll stop that share. So yeah, the thought was that if you had a preference for one or other of the locations, like a Facebook group or LinkedIn group or a Slack channel, you could just put one of those into the chat function shortly. Or if you had you know, you like to use it, you know, more than one, you could put all 3 of them in or whatever. So we just thought we'd capture that, and then for those, you know, we'd just tally all that up, just see how many people were interested in it, and then if we had enough interest, we would create something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you very much. It's really good to have other people's energy and ideas, so I welcome it at any time. And if people are interested in doing this, then maybe you can also just email me afterwards. That's fine too. And in the summary, I'll put a question of, would you like to see this or that? And we'll just organically grow this and see where it goes. I'm seeing in the chat there are quite a few people saying that they would be interested in having a Slack channel. So I think, Sue, you have the remit now to go ahead.
Excuse me, Stephen. Sorry, Aaron here. I drafted up a sort of 2-page how to use Slack info sheet. So I'll flick that to you to share with everyone as well. It's probably got Council for International Development written all over it, but it'd possibly be quite helpful to include that in the follow-up to this as well. It's a great platform. Yeah.
Great, perfect. Yeah, I've just used it a lot in doing this Impact On conference where we had 25 people organizing an event, and it just cut down on the volume of emails out because we were able just to put messages and back and forth that way. So yeah, it's quite a good tool. And judging by the number who've said Slack, I think it's worth doing. And we'll put links, and then if people want to explore it, then they can. Yeah, that's great. So we've still got 37 on the call. I know a number of people have calls that they then need to go off to at 12:30 and everything. And obviously the beauty of recording this is that if you want to, you can watch it again later. And I love technology because I know last week's call, there was about 40 or so on it, but then the YouTube clip has been watched about 50 times. So it just shows the power of, you know, making things accessible. And actually, I had somebody who's only ever been on one of these video calls contacting me by email and said how much she appreciated the summaries coming out. So even though she's not actively able to come on the call, it's still there. So we'll keep it up. So now what I'd like to do is do these breakout rooms. And what we try to do here is split you into small enough groups where you each will actually be able to talk. Because with 37 of you, there's no way it would be a constructive conversation if we all shared our perspective. So what I'll do is send you into a number of different rooms. And then if one of you at the start can agree to be the scribe and write down some bullet points and then email them to me afterwards, then I can include those in the email update that I'll send out on Monday with the video link. And I think the aim here is just to share what's going on in your world. What are the resources you're seeing? What would we all benefit from knowing? So if we went around all of us, it just wouldn't work. But by using Slack, by using Zoom, yeah, we're able to all have a perspective. So that's what I'm going to do now. Yeah, hopefully that breakout room function allows us to share with each other on a more personal way and actually have our voice heard as well, which you can't get in the bigger environment. Now, Roz, I realize I forgot to ask you to say a little update before, because you've had somebody approach you from Australia and you wanted to see if this group would be interested in hearing them come and talk. Do you want to give an update about that?
Now, look, what I'll do is that I talked about it in my group, and our scribe will give you just a brief thing.
Okay, perfect. That sounds good. The other thing that I forgot to mention before sending you all away is that I've just been helping pull together resources on legal things. So we've done a book now, which is about 50 pages, and trying to open source the most common questions that we're seeing people have. So I'll put a link to that in the summaries that go out. So the next part of the call, what we'll do is hear back from the groups, and then if the scribe can send me an email summarizing it. So we don't need everything that you discuss, you know, we don't want 5 minutes, just really what are the key points that you talked about, and then we'll make sure that those go in the summaries that go out to the wider group as well. So I don't really have group numbers, so if whoever was appointed can report back and we'll just move through the groups, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm happy to report back for our group.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome. So yeah, we were talking really about the momentum at the moment and the next steps, and you know how we use and utilize this collective, but also the positives within this COVID response, and ensure that that is continued in the future, so we're not losing things. And there was a discussion about Christchurch and how, unfortunately, even though there was very positive and opportunistic chances to make things better, they didn't all happen, and especially with the pressure individually on people and the distraction of the election, that we may lose some of the opportunity unless we're very careful and continue this conversation. So we talked through that. Something else that we mentioned was just the beneficial elements of the COVID response around trust and flexibility, especially in the disability sector. You know, I've had comments from the rare disorder community around the fact that this just made their life easier, and going back to red tape that causes barriers and blocks and siloed thinking, it ends up creating more cost down the line or in someone else's bucket, you know. But the actual holistic approach to support people in a positive way, we don't want to move away from that back into a siloed, one-sided thinking, which actually ends up making sure that that person falls over. So it's you know, the opportunities and the actions and the next steps. You know, we didn't come up with a solution, but we're just keen to not lose the positives within the COVID situation.
It's really good. I agree. It's so important. Anne and I were talking about this morning as well. Like, what can we take going forwards, and in particular, cross-sector collaboration and hearing of stories and journeys. And yeah, there's a lot we can learn. Thank you very much. So the next group.
Kia ora, my name is Paddy. I'll speak for our group as our scribe. So I was in with Ros Rice, who was actually my work buddy, who talked about the motivational speaker from Australia, who I will put into our notes that I sent to you, Stephen, so it's probably easy to read that through. But we're also talking about how the future of volunteering is going to look after this, and the way that entities are going to have to look at the different way in which they fundamentally get volunteers and how they're utilised within an ongoing process. We're also talking about sort of a Manaki initiative in terms of this development of what's occurred with the COVID-19, but in terms of the support and the trust and the friendship and the love that has already occurred, how do we continue that momentum? How do we expand it through the different types of organisations? And how do we make it a more formalistic way and make this initiative part of the ongoing process of both volunteering, but more than that, the way that we are in the social structure in the volunteer sector. So that's pretty much what we were talking about.
It's good. It's a continuing conversation, isn't it? How will it impact volunteering? So thank you. And
also, he forgot to mention that we sang.
Really? Well done. I haven't heard that one before. What were you singing? A happy birthday or something else?
What a difference a day makes.
Ah. Well, maybe this is an idea for collaboration in the future. We can do a group choir. Great, thank you. How about the next group?
Hi, I'll report for group 3. So we had, I'm Amanda from Multiple Sclerosis, and we had some discussion around what everyone had been doing. There's been quite an increased use of technology by most groups. And for some groups, there's been quite a shift of having to move from paper-based reporting, particularly within volunteering, to electronic, which has been quite a huge process for some. There are some concerns, though, obviously, with the amount of people and the amount of information that is technology-based, that there's going to be a lot of people who will be excluded going forward. So we just need to be quite mindful of that and how we still reach those people. There was some concerns raised as well around burnout for organisations, particularly in the way that civil defence has been set up. Obviously with the 0800 numbers, many people think that civil defence then answer those responses, but they've actually been connecting with community organisations. And there seems to be no structure as to what's going to be happening when that civil defence response stops. About how information will get out to the community about where supports are. There's also been some other concerns around a lot of work being done by local community organisations, and then government and local councils appointing their own outside providers and ignoring the local initiatives that are there. And then we also just had a chat around volunteering, and the impact as well that it's had on volunteering, keeping people informed, the importance of training and actual volunteer management, and having clear structures around volunteering going forward.
Great, thank you. It's always interesting to hear the themes that come through, isn't it? You know, the volunteering comes up over and over. That's really good. And the next group, I think there were 6 of you, by the way, so.
This was us from group 2. Mostly we listened to Becky Lee, who is joining the conversation from a Chinese migrant in Auckland church. And she brought the really stark reminder to our conversation about elderly members of their parish and family members who are not only further isolated with the age, but the language barrier and then the technology barrier. And if that weren't hard enough, that when they are, I say they, but generally experiencing racism when they leave the comfort of their house, being from Chinese background. And it was a really harsh reminder that, you know, that's happening even in New Zealand. I shared I was very happy blaming Trump for fomenting all of this ridiculousness, but not very pleasant to think that that's happening here. And then we also talked about the reality that the not-for-profit sector isn't getting the same attention quickly from government in terms of the resources that the business sector is getting, that Air New Zealand, that even the education sector is getting. Yet the people that are at the front lines here are frequently from the not-for-profit sector delivering services, and really need to see some recognition and support in the budget and from the government to enable this section of our society to continue to do the hard mahi, and without it becoming strangled or over-engineered from government systems. And I think that covers off what we've been talking about.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah, I agree completely. I keep seeing news articles that say stimulus package announced or government support here or there, which is important, but I've yet to see the headline that says, you know, support for this sector. So we'll see. So yeah, if the people who are reporting back, if you're able to just type a few sentences about the topics and send them through, that would be great. Next group.
Ruth, I think, or is there someone else? Hi, this is John, and I was prescribed for group 1. I think we spent a lot of time just actually identifying where we were from, and we're all from the South Island in some way or another. But we had a good chat, and we met a few, we met, it was a good opportunity to meet. We no one knew each other until today, so it was a really good opportunity to connect. A couple of themes that came out of it, our discussion was Jane Zintel was on the call, and she mentioned she heads up the youth development national body, and they have a youth week on the 9th and the 17th of May. They've had to adapt that to now be online to celebrate youth at this time, but also just wanting to really offer, youth as to provide a fresh perspective, and using that week to sort of around a theme called "We're Speaking, Are You Listening?" So that is just a shout out to them and to the work that they are doing, noting that they can't no longer do the face-to-face events, and it's all in a digital format. So that's the 9th to the 17th of May. And then we had the lovely Catherine Peat on our call, and first time I've met Catherine, but it was nice to meet Catherine. I'm looking forward to making connections there further. And she noted, or amongst the group of us, a new emergent politics of generosity and goodwill, and perhaps an observation that people are ready to look for a new treaty, or look at the treaty in a different framework, away from being an historical document to more of a living document. And Catherine also mentioned a link to a Ministry of Culture and Heritage post there around a post-COVID response to understanding the treaty. So I'll get that link from you, Catherine, and put that in the notes. And there's a special mention to a blog spot called One Voice in Christchurch that perhaps people want to look at. And that was us.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, this is Ruth from Inland Revenue. It's my first time joining the Zoom call.
Oh, welcome.
So in my group, we basically, thank you. We talked a bit more about what was going on outside of the country, and one clear insight is that there's increasing demand on charities outside New Zealand, and for countries whose economy already had a bit of a shake-up, it's even harder to continue to offer services to the community because increase in demand keeps rising. But the thing is that people want change, but what sort of change is going to happen post-COVID lockdown? And if we're looking at collaborating across sectors, what would that look like? So we talked a bit about what a new normal could be for charities across New Zealand. So we're going to have like 2-3 charities or smaller coming together and then cutting costs just to keep operation going, so we don't have a lot of charities shutting down. And Charities Services is coming up with a webinar next week for charities across New Zealand, and we believe that there are indications that even though the impact of COVID-19 has been hard, we will come out on the other side quite quick and better than other countries. And we have a lot of models around how we can recover and begin to come on board again and get our footing as a country, and including the charity sector. I think I wrapped that quite shortly, Dinda. Any other thing I missed? Francesca and Katie and Adrian?
Ruth forgot to tell you about her work that she's doing. So she works for IR and she's doing a report. Do you want to talk about your work, Ruth?
Okay, I could. So at the moment, I'm in the customer insights and evaluations team. So we do the research work for Inland Revenue, and I'm currently working on an insight pack that would summarize the impact of COVID-19 on not-for-profits and charity sector across New Zealand. And this is supposed to help us come up with we can mirror changes that are occurring as a result of this impact and help come along charities in the future from a tax perspective.
That's great. Yeah, well, thank you for that update, and also for what's going on at Inland Revenue. That's great to hear. I've been chatting with Stuart Donaldson and saying at some point it'd be great to hear more fully. So maybe we can arrange that at some point, because we often get Charities Services talking, but it's good to hear from different people, different parts. Yeah, that's right.
Government, yeah. Okay.
Great. All right. Well, I think that's all the groups. Well done, everybody. There's a lot of good content there. So I think we'll just, as I've said, almost every call, I think I say it seems to be helping. People are enjoying the calls. So I think we'll just keep doing it. And so the plan, rather than putting myself under pressure to get everything pulled together and edited the video, before I was trying to send it out as soon as possible after the call, I'm just going to take it a bit slower. I'm going to send it out on Monday morning. So if whoever did the summaries, if you can send me your summaries, I'll put those in the email, and then I'll do another invite for next Friday, and we'll just continue. Fridays work well for me, and I think they work well for all of you, so we'll keep going. But if also, I'll put a link, because I think we will do the Slack channel, so I'll put a link to that, and if anybody wants to join, then they can do that. And the final thing is, if you have any other content or links or things that you'd like to share, then you have my email, so just hit reply, and I'll just I just copy paste stuff in, and very happy to help spread the word about initiatives like the Youth Week, for example. You know, we can put a link to that as well. So
Stephen, excuse me, I've just sent you a link to a webinar that Council for International Development is holding on Tuesday afternoon. It's in regards to public health, COVID messaging and coordination with the Pacific community, particularly outside of New Zealand, but that's going to be run by the Pacifica Medical Association, Debbie Sorensen from there. So it's, if anyone's interested, I've emailed the link to you as well.
Perfect. And I've copy pasted it into the draft email, so it's there. Yep. So yeah, just literally send me links or information, and we'll just keep circulating and supporting each other. You know, it's a hard time, but as we come into the next stages, I think it will be, yeah, good to continue collaborating and having these sorts of conversations. So no matter what, I'm planning to continue this group. How often we meet or the format may change, but I think it is fulfilling something which has been missing. So that's really good. And that's all down to you all as well. And if you know people who'd be interested, feel free to pass things on as well. That's the other bit. But I'm going to close off the call, and thank you everybody for joining. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Stephen.